Hello and welcome to News Central TV. I'm Darshan Usman. Here are stories making headlines beyond the continent. We begin the news in U.S., where the White House has denied the claim that the U.S. President Joe Biden is being treated for Parkinson's disease. His spokeswoman, in a televised briefing, reacted after reports that an expert in the condition visited the White House 8 times. In the meantime, the National Security Council spokesman, John Kirby, also reacted to elections in Iran and France and speaks about potential announcements on air defenses to Ukraine in the coming days.
Going back to Parkinson's for a little bit, so to give you some answers here, has the president been treated for Parkinson's? No. Is he being treated for Parkinson's? No, he's not. Is he taking medication for Parkinson's? No. So those are the things that I can give you full-blown answers on, but I'm not going to confirm a specialist, any specialist that comes to the White House out of.
Well, it seems like a pretty easy question to answer. No, we're not in a position where we're willing to get back to the negotiating table with Iran just based on the fact that they've elected a new president. They're still supporting terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. They're still supporting the Houthis as the Houthis attack ships in the Red Sea. They're still attacking shipping as well. And they're still supplying drones and drone technology and drone expertise to the Russians so that the Russians can continue to kill innocent Ukrainians like they did over the weekend. So, no.
A bit more moderate. Do you see any opening?
We'll see what this guy wants to get done, but we are not expecting any changes in Iranian behavior.
The NATO Summit, initially planned to celebrate the alliance's 75th anniversary and solidify long-term military support for Ukraine, is taking an unexpected turn as it becomes a public test of 81-year-old President Joe Biden's health and cognitive abilities. This comes at a crucial moment for his re-election campaign following a troubling debate performance. President Biden's leadership of NATO, especially his support for Ukraine after Russia's invasion, positions him as a pivotal figure in the alliance, comparable to President George H.W. Bush. His accomplishments, such as facilitating the entry of Sweden and Finland into NATO, may be overshadowed by his current political struggles. The president's performance at the summit will be critical in maintaining confidence both domestically and internationally. Joining me on the news to discuss this is an international analyst, Bolu Michael-Biyi. Hello, Bolu. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you.
So how will the concerns about President Biden's health and mental acuity affect his ability to lead NATO's response to the crisis in Ukraine?
Well, if the NATO member states perceive President Biden to not be of sound mind or in good health, I think they might doubt his leadership of not just the summit, but the entire organization, the NATO itself. And that weakens his influence and also the influence of the United States as a country. And they might begin to look elsewhere as regards the country that should take the lead in terms of decision making or even just coordinating the responses to against Russia or towards commitments to Ukraine, because it was founded in 1949. I think Canada and 11 other countries. So they might be looking at those countries to overtake the United States in taking that role.
Well, you did say that if he is perceived as weak, but then is there even an ounce of possibility that, Biden's leadership at the NATO summit would inspire unity and support for Ukraine among member states? Or do you think that it would inadvertently, create divisions?
Well, it depends on how President Biden now conducts himself at the summit. If he comes across as a strong, decisive leader of clear mind and and good spirit, and is able to come up with new ideas and set the direction for the summit and other member states, then that may inspire other member states to be fully committed to NATO, and if the opposite, if the reverse is the case, if it's coming across as weak, is not able to coordinate himself or articulate himself, or is not bringing anything new to the table, it may actually influence other member states, and they might doubt if they should proceed in committing further to the organization or even contributing towards Ukraine against Russia.
All right, Bolu, now given President Biden's long-standing support for a stronger NATO, so many questions are actually being asked. How will his current political struggles impact the alliance's future growth and direction, especially with new members like Sweden and Finland?
First, I think if the U.S. is perceived as weak in terms of leadership and things that they're not having their house together. I know in countries as good as how coordinated they are locally. If they see that U.S. does not have the house together, then how would they be able to lead 32 or so other countries? And that may influence the addition of new members or even further commitments to the group, to the organization. But I don't think the member states have much to worry about. I also don't think that an issue, but a politician's personal challenges at home will be a part of the agenda of a NATO summit. But in case that happens, I don't think they don't have anything to fear, because if President Biden doesn't win the election and Trump becomes president, both of them, at least they share that common vision of having a strong defense, and NATO is central to that objective.
Well, Bolu, just before we let you go, let's reconnect or track back to President Biden's debate performance and its impact on his re-election bid. How would you say, or how do you think that NATO allies can actually ensure that their partnership remains strong and stable despite these domestic political uncertainties?
Well, the NATO member states have to start thinking outside the box to ensure as much as possible that in case of any domestic challenge of any, not only the United States, but any member state, they'll be able to, still remain stable. And they can do that by, individually committing afresh to the NATO agenda, the mission, the goals and objectives, by increasing their bilateral relationship among member states, and also fostering dialogue so that they can have a common voice independent of the United States, and this way they can maintain long-term stability of NATO.
All right, well, thank you so much, Bolu, for your time and also for speaking to us on this.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Away from that, the U.S. government has blocked a British court hearing from taking place on a British territory, citing security concerns, according to court documents. The Supreme Court of British Indian Ocean Territory was due to hold a hearing this week on whether a group of migrants was being unlawfully detained on the island of Diego Garcia. U.S. last week said it was withdrawing its consent for lawyers representing the migrants and members of the press, and that it would not allow participants to the hearing to board U.S. military flights to Diego Garcia, and will not provide transport, accommodation or food on the island until its security and operational concerns are adequately addressed. Still in North America, Haitian police say they will soon launch operations against powerful gangs terrorizing the country. Newly appointed Chief Ramir Normil made this known in a news conference, his first public remark since assuming the job on June 21st. He was joined by Godfrey Otunge, the commander of the Kenyan contingent, the first personnel so far deployed of a UN-approved multinational security force. For years, Haiti has been at the mercy of well-armed gangs that now control 80% of the capital, Port-au-Prince, and also major roads in the destitute Caribbean country.
Nous avons un travail
which we have committed to do,
que nous engagés nous pour nous faire.
and we must do it to the best of our ability.
Et nous devons faire les pour capacité nous, faire moyen de capacité, de meilleur nous,
And strive for success.
pour nous arriver travail pour succès.
The job is to ensure
Job nous c'est assurer
there's a restoration of peace
restauration la paix
throughout Haiti.
à travers toute Haïti.
Nous sommes en période d'évaluation avec planification. Pour nous aborder question si là, l'idée pour nous neutraliser les bandits et mettre hors d'état de nuire. Nous avons demandé femmes vaillantes pour garçons vaillants en dans la police nationale là, pour agir avec toute force contre bandits. Moi, nous autorité pour ça. Une façon pour l'ordre établi sur tout le pays.
Beyond the Continent will return after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now in Europe, a court in Moscow has issued an arrest warrant for the widow of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny on charges of extremism. According to state media, the allegations made against Yulia Navalny, an expatriate of Russia, concern her purported participation in an extremist society. Russian authorities said the opposition leader died in an Arctic Circle jail of natural causes. Navalny had been serving 19 years on extremism charges that were widely seen as politically motivated. However, his widow accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of killing him. The Moscow court ruled that Yulia Navalny who has vowed to continue the work of her husband should be remanded in custody and has been declared wanted. Senior UN officials told an emergency meeting of the Security Council on Tuesday that targeting hospitals in Ukraine is a war crime, called in the wake of deadly strikes that Kyiv blamed on Russia. This comes after Russia launched dozens of missiles at cities across Ukraine on Monday in an attack that killed at least 31 people and smashed into a children's hospital in Kyiv, and 2 people have died at the hospital as a result of the strike. Acting Under Secretary for Humanitarian Affairs, Joyce Msuya, says internationally directing attacks against a protected hospital is a war crime and perpetrators must be held to account for these incidents, noting that they are part of a deeply concerning pattern of systemic attacks harming healthcare and other civilian infrastructure across Ukraine.
Let me remind this Council that hospitals have special protection under international humanitarian law. Intentionally directing attacks against a protected hospital is a war crime, and perpetrators must be held to account.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds talks with President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday, a day after the Indian leader arrived in Moscow amid global outcry over a barrage of Russian strikes on Ukraine. Modi, visiting Moscow for the first time since Russia launched its campaign in Ukraine in February 2022, urged for peace on a trip to Moscow over 2 years into the Ukraine offensive and seeking to nurture New Delhi's long-standing relationship with Moscow. At the same time, he is courting closer Western security ties after being returned to power last month. Western powers have in recent years also cultivated stronger relations with India as a hedge against China and its growing influence across the Asia-Pacific, while pressuring New Delhi to distance itself from Russia.
युद्ध हो, संघर्ष हो, आतंकवादी हमले हो, मानवता में विश्वास करने वाला हर व्यक्ति जब जानहानि होती है तब बहुत पीड़ित होता है, लेकिन उसमें भी जब मासूम बच्चों की कत्ल होती है, मासूम बच्चों को मरते हुए देखते हैं.
Congressmen from the Renaissance LRPS and Communist parties reassemble at the Palais Bourbon 2 days after early legislative elections that upended the French political order. Upon arrival, Renaissance MP for Londres and former Minister Geneviève de Rissac says They hope that they will be endowed with collective intelligence and that everyone will step out of their usual postures to assume a sense of responsibility. Meanwhile, French parties have sought to project strength and gather allies on Tuesday, with the government adrift following an election in which no one political force claimed a clear majority.
Nous serons dotés d'intelligence collective et que chacun sortira de ses postures habituelles pour avoir le sens des responsabilités et le sens d'amener un petit peu la France vers d'autres horizons. Voilà, donc parlons, échangeons et parlons de l'essentiel, c'est-à-dire des besoins des Français aujourd'hui. Merci.
Pour le moment, j'appelle à une chose, c'est qu'on ait le courage de répondre aux urgences qui sont apparues, qui se sont manifestées, urgences sociales, qui sont montées de nos territoires. Attendez, d'abord, pour moi, ce qui me semble important, c'est qu'il y a des gens qui sont en souffrance, qui sont en colère, qui ont pu l'exprimer par un vote extrême, et notamment un vote d'extrême droite. Il faut donc apporter une réponse. Il y a aujourd'hui, dans notre pays, il y a une fracture. La République est abîmée. Donc la première réponse à apporter, c'est au niveau social. Et à partir de là.
Let's head to the Middle East, where UNRWA Commissioner General Felipe Lazzarini, at a joint press conference with Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi in Amman, stated that since the beginning of the war, almost every Gazan have been displaced more than once, showing how basically there is absolutely no safe space in the Gaza Strip. This comes after Israel pushed on with a major military offensive in war-ravaged Gaza City on Tuesday that the UN said has once again displaced tens of thousands of Palestinians. Hamas, whose October 7th attack started the war, has accused Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of deliberately stepping up battles in Gaza City and in far southern Rafah in order to thwart a ceasefire agreement.
About people below the age of 18 in Gaza. Among them, more than 600,000 are on the age of primary and secondary health school. They are all living in the rubble. They are deeply, deeply traumatized.
من دون موقف حازم صارم حقيقيا واضح فوريا من المجتمع الدولي يلزم إسرائيل بالقيام بمسؤولياتها كالقوة القائمة بالاحتلال ويفرض عليها إدخال المساعدات وفتح جميع المعابر ويفرض عليها تأمين الحماية للمنظمات الأممية. سنجد أنفسنا في مواجهة كارثة إنسانية أكبر من الكارثة التي لم يشهد لها التاريخ الحديث مثيلا حتى الآن. نحن فقدنا جيلا كاملا في غزة نتيجة هذا العدوان. أكثر من 500,000 طفل فلسطيني في غزة الآن لم يذهبوا إلى المدارس منذ أكثر من 9.
The United States say it does not expect policy changes from Iran after voters elected reformist candidate Masoud Pezeshkian and downplayed chances to resume dialogue. Now, State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is expected to call the shots in Iran, an adversary of the United States since the 1979 Islamic Revolution.
No expectations that this election will lead to a fundamental change in Iran's direction or its policies. At the end of the day, it's not the president that has the ultimate say over the future of Iran's policy. It is the supreme leader. And of course, we have seen the direction that he has chosen to take Iran in. Obviously, if the new president had the authority to make steps to curtail Iran's nuclear program, to stop funding terrorism, to stop destabilizing activities in the region, those would be steps that we would welcome. But needless to say, we don't have any expectation that that's what's likely to.
In Asia, at least 5 soldiers have been killed in an ambush by suspected militants in the Katwa district of India. According to initial reports, the soldiers and military vehicles came under fire from militants hiding in a nearby hill. We understand that reinforcements arrived quickly and a search operation was launched to track down the attackers. Kashmir has seen an armed insurgency against Indian rule since 1989, but violence has waned in recent years. The attack in Jammu marks a month of increasing violence in the region. Last month, 9 people died and 30 were injured after suspected militants fired on a bus carrying Hindu pilgrims in the area. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh said he was deeply anguished at the lives lost in the latest attack. Let's also tell you that a Taiwanese surgeon has been indicted for allegedly photographing and leaking confidential defense information to China. Taiwan High Prosecutor's Office said the sergeant named Chen worked at a Navy training center and was recruited by an unspecified number of people who collected intelligence for mainland China through messaging apps in between April 2022 and February 2023. He photographed secret national defense information in the counties of Pingtung, Yilan, and other places. With his mobile phone, he sent the information 4 times via line and telegram for a total illegal gain of $5,230. The office said Chen was charged with violating the Criminal Code of the Armed Forces and the Anti-Corruption Act. The sergeant's indictment was the latest in a recent string of spying cases. Still in Asia, Beijing has lashed out at NATO's smears and attacks after the head of the defense alliance, Jens Stoltenberg, said China was supporting and enabling Russia's illegal war of aggression in Ukraine on the eve of a show peace summit in Washington. China's foreign ministry spokesman Ling Xian also commented on Australia's cyber intelligence agency that warned about state-backed Chinese hackers. According to Xian, the relevant parties have once again used China's so-called cyber attacks as a pretext to smear and slander China. And that's all at this hour. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Darshan Usman.